welcome to the Sacred Window podcast. Here, we look closely at the intersections of the postpartum window, the Ayurvedic perspective on health and healing, and the universal mother principles that are the keys to giving and receiving effective care. Hello, I'm Christine Devlin Eck. I'll be taking you through interviews with professionals who are making a profound difference in the lives of their clients, conversations with individuals brave enough to share their stories of vulnerability as a way to lift up others, and my own journey through birth, parenting, caregiving, and building a conscious business. We are here to honor the sacred windows, the profound transitions in life that give it all meaning. Welcome to the conversation.
And I will never be the same again.
Welcome to the Sacred Window podcast. It is a very great pleasure for me to enter into this conversation today. My guest is Grace Allerdice. Grace and I are going to be exploring what it means to sort of leave the old us behind and become someone new that we're being invited to become, that we're invited to expand into. And whether this is in the postpartum window, whether this is at a life crux where we're willing or not changing, and we have an opportunity here to really harness some incredible empowerment from that, or feel the weight kind of pressing down on us into a place of potential despair. And I'm just so grateful to Grace. Grace is a spiritual writer, a teacher. She's a healer and facilitator. She has a background in mystical and magical studies and embodiment practices that range from art making and performance, yoga. And I really appreciate the way that you bring all of these callings into a practice of helping people explore life and ceremony and death and all the ways that those interact with each other to create a life that is, I don't know, it's almost a lack of a word, but it feels like a ringing, like there's like a resonance, I can feel it in my body when I'm talking about it. But what you're doing is really powerful. And I think we have the opportunity to grow into a magnificent version of ourselves, or maybe cower behind a limited version of ourselves that we are afraid we're stuck inside. So thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
I'd love to just begin with, I think, I am an artist in a lot of ways as well. And we have the privilege as people who are involved in that type of community and practice to like go to some exploratory places. Whereas other types of, I'm thinking of like my theater background and my music background, and like we get to do weird and crazy things. Whereas like my children who are super sporty, like they don't get to play and like experiment in those ways. And how did like your background of that lead you to do the work that you do today?
I think realizing the through line from some of those things, those like early initial, almost like primal desires, which for me was like, I just wanted to dance and I wanted to perform and I loved music and I loved being on stage, and realizing the through line of all of those into where I am now has been such a gift that I think, I'm 40 now. And so I think it takes 40 years to start to begin to see that through line, which is such a profound gift. And I think something that I think it's really brought me is it's brought me close to movement and my body. And it's taught me how to listen to the moment in a very embodied way. That is also the same skill set for ceremony and ritual, and even providing care during these portals of life or these sensitive moments. It teaches you how to go into a situation that is, even if you've rehearsed it a million times, whether you're doing a ballet or whether you're doing a performance art piece with a very loose score, you don't know what will happen. And the the confidence, the trust, and the skill of listening to the moment and following what is, and improvising, being able to respond in a way that's like highly creative and attuned and sometimes wrong, right? Sometimes not the best choice, but being able to bounce from that and play with it and approach the moment from this place of play and experimentation is a really, it's gifted me so much, and it's become so natural from all of those years of being in those worlds with those skill sets that I often assume it in other people. And it's taken a long time for me to realize, like, oh, this is something that I learned how to do from a very young age. And all of the ways that's gifted my life and helped me be with others and be with life in a myriad of situations is mm, a really massive gift from all of those years of solely seeking and experimenting in performance and dance and theater and all of those things. Do you agree with your background in theater? Some of the similar. There's something about being on stage. There's something about performance and being in these like time based capsules that, in a lot of ways, mirror the story of life, that they can be great training grounds, because I think also they're not competitive necessarily. I guess they can be, but I didn't experience them that way. And I was speaking to my husband about this recently, is that, we're so oriented towards like sports where someone wins and someone loses. But if you're in a theater, you're just telling a story. Nobody wins, nobody loses. You're just participating in the story. And, whether I was working behind stage or on stage, like I just loved, I still love all of it. Um, and I'm really grateful for all of the ways that really forged me, in some ways that were extremely difficult and challenging, but it really contributed a lot to who I am.
I love this so much. And I don't think that I thought about what I was actually receiving from all those experiences
Mm.
doing that. And something you said, like the ability to fully be in the moment. Because when you're performing, when you're tapped into the piece, whatever it is that we're doing, we're not thinking about anything else except for fully embodying that role or that moment. And like that's the zone, that's that's the goal. Sometimes we might be, you know, fearful of audience or something like that, but the goal is to fully be embodied in that zone. And you're right, that is such good training ground for absolutely anything that we're doing in life, because how much of our time are we spending looking forward? I literally just was talking about this with a friend and colleague today about the practice of like laying down those sort of future visions or expectations we have of ourselves, and laying down the feelings of failure or not enough from like what has happened behind us, and really sinking and surrendering into this very moment and getting curious and playful about like how deeply can I experience the qualities of this moment? How much can I understand about everything that's happening in this moment, and how beautiful could it possibly be? And that is like everything. That's like the ultimate goal, but it's not something that we can often easily do. Like it takes so much intention. But why the heck not? Like, why don't we? Like, we actually can. And that's what I'm curious about is like when there's those places of like we're lost in everywhere but where we want to be.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, it's fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, I think those things that you mentioned, one of the things I like to say is beauty is everything, the capital B, beauty. And which is, I think, more than, lipstick and mascara and flowers. But of course, it can be those things, but it's that like severe beauty of life, the way it like hurts a little bit when you're watching a sunset, or the way that you're hyper aware of this moment's going to end, even if it's perfect. The way that this experience of time and impermanence and embodiment, this endless transition and chapters beginning and ending, there's a way that it is exquisitely beautiful when we can bring ourselves to be present with it. And that will also ask us to be witness to how it breaks our heart open at the same time. And I think when we're seeing a goal or a desire, or we're feeling that discrepancy between where we are and where we want to be, sometimes it feels like an abyss or a chasm, and we have no idea how we're going to cross it. And everything in our culture tells us to just work really hard, build the bridge across the chasm as fast as you can. But I think when we get into those deep, profound shifts of who we are and purpose, that are a lot of times when we feel like we're sitting at the bottom of the pit of failure and feeling humiliated and ashamed and like, I can't believe I did that. There, in my experience, both in my own life and with other people, it's not about building the bridge to get out of it. It's about surrendering to that moment. Like something behind the fear or the pain or what you think this story says about you is trying to give you a gift. There's something that you can only become your way out of this. It's not anything you can achieve your way out of this. And a lot of it is consistently returning to, this is making me cry a little bit, so maybe it's for y'all's audience, but returning to that innocence of what made you go for it in the first place. Everything that's feeding your wanting to take the next step, you're wanting to fully realize who you are and fully like soak up all of the juice and the feast of life and touch everything and feel the beauty. Like there's an innocence about that, even when you fail, or perhaps especially when you fail. And I think when we really, it feels contradictory, but when we really are able to sink into the full dark of those moments, there's a really powerful becoming that can happen there, similar to how a baby happens in the womb in the dark. And you have to really just surrender to the intelligence of that process that knows how to make something new. That's with you, I think, in particularly, or in that severe beauty sort of way in those moments.
Mm, mm. There's so much there. There's
Mm.
so- you like went so many places that are just like, let's just take a second. Wow. Yeah. I'm picturing like being at the bottom of that chasm, and like the only thing to do is to surrender and to trust that we're there to understand something really, really big.
Mm-hmm.
And when we are at that bottom place, there's really only one place to go. And if we just allow us to release the pressure of needing to climb our way out, like we will be lifted out, because there's
Mm-hmm.
this, I think what I can see in moments where I am not facing sort of the reckoning, which this is what we're here to talk about. Like this is something that every one of us is going to have to navigate in life multiple times. Like we face this reckoning. This is part of the human experience. And so I not being in that place of acute reckoning, like I can look at it and I can see it as the the essence of who we are is
Mm-hmm.
this innocence, this beautiful, pure innocence that is curious, that is in balance, that is just naturally aligned with who we know ourselves to be, who we are in source universe, whatever we want to use for words, like we are balanced. And so being able to surrender into the trust that that quality is always there, I think about what you're mentioning of that exquisite beauty that is, it's it's vulnerable. That is vulnerable. I think about, I know I've said this before in many places, but when I was pregnant for the second time, I was attending my like prenatal visits were at this beautiful a center office. My midwives had an office in this place, and the bathroom was like beautifully painted by this artist, and she had all these poems and like sayings like all over the walls, and one of them was like, becoming a parent is deciding to walk through life with your heart on the outside of your body. And every single time I went there, I would like be in the bath and I'd be like looking at that, like you're facing that incredible weight of delicate, just vulnerability. And yet we're deciding to do that because to do that gives us the potential for who even knows? Like we don't even know the reaches of where we can go when we allow ourselves to move into that exquisite beauty. And yet, when we're, for example, moving into the postpartum window and maybe we're, 2 to 3 weeks in and we haven't slept and we don't recognize ourselves because we're so depleted sometimes if we're not given the care and support that we wish we would have had. And even if we do have that care and loving support, we still are tasked with so much more than we really feel we have.
Mm-hmm.
And there's expectations that we hold sometimes on ourselves of what we will be able to do or what our parenting will look like or what our bonding process is going to look like or what our partner and I are going to be able to do together and how we're going to show up for each other. And sometimes what we actually experience is this very different path. And all of a sudden, we're like, you know, little like centimeter by centimeter each day moving further away from this thing that we had thought was going to happen. And what I'm so curious about is this threshold where we come to where we realize like I don't know how to surrender into this and feel good about myself in this journey anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so many of us like come to places like that, whether it's in postpartum or not. And what does it look like to reclaim, to transform that fragile beauty? Because it really is beautiful when we can look back on it and we see that like unfolding. I know like there's so much it's been said, like, the caterpillar with the goo and turning into the butterfly, like it's the goo. But what is it that really allows us to harness that autonomy that says, I decide, not I am just being dragged along into circumstance, like I decide that I'm becoming this. And how does that transformation happen?
A couple of things I think are coming to mind as you say that are, I think, orienting to the primary song that's getting sung underneath these rhythms is death and resurrection. And so if it feels like death, it's because it is. If it feels hard, it's because it is. If it feels like you're dying, you're not doing it wrong. I think it's I remember hearing Clarissa Pinkola Estes talk about like this is how we learn to resurrect you by doing it. And you don't learn to resurrect by just halfway dying. And I think, too, as care providers, people who hold space for other people, noting and marking those moments for yourself, going all the way in and letting yourself get burned all the way up so that you can come all the way back as this new and remade being is such one of the most powerful things you can do as a care provider, because when you witness other people in that space, you have an acute embodied awareness of the secret that they can get from this, and that will change how you hold space for them, as opposed to someone who is primarily scared or uncomfortable on behalf of someone else. What does it look like to care for someone knowing that they're in this massively severe, beautiful portal of transformation, and there's a gift in here for them and they need support being in that moment rather than needing to be rescued or told that it should be something else? And I think those in particular are such important things to remember. And I think too, there's something like when we're in the goo, like what we're getting access to as we get unmade and remade as something else is more of ourself. The reason it feels like we're used to when we're fully able, when everything's going right, when we're comfortable, we're like, I know who I am today, and I got my brownie points at work and school or whatever the thing is. We're able to rest comfortably in like our efforting, and in those moments, our efforting isn't enough. Either we don't have any, or whatever effort energy we have isn't enough. So there's a deeper, more true layer and level of self and collaboration of life that's being asked of you that has nothing to do with your effort. And that's, I think, one reason why it's so profoundly uncomfortable, but it is the process of you getting access to something more true about yourself, that once you have reclaimed that, like no one can take that away from you. You have it forever. It's become who you are. And so what's the way that we can care for people and be caring and compassionate towards ourselves in these moments that fosters the process and doesn't rob them of the process? Because I think something too, it's like, it's what is it like, animals coming out of the egg, or the butterfly coming out, the effort, the way that they've never had wings before, and I've got to like figure out how to get out of all this goo so I can fly away. If you open the goo for them, they will die instantly because they don't know how to fly, they don't have the strength. So the process of getting out of the goo and learning to be like, I have wings now, that must be allowed. Like they have to be able to do it. And so what then is our role or our positioning in holding space for people and caring for them? And you said something really beautiful about you keep orienting to the word understanding. And I think when we orient to just how fragile and frail and vulnerable all of life is in every moment, and we feel acutely aware of that in these moments of having a baby or when someone gets really sick, these lives where our normal is disrupted, we feel the sharpness of how frail and fragile everything is. And that can open us to understanding. Like, look at how human we all are. Look at how much I take for granted. Look at how I just walk around acting like all of this is normal and it could disappear like that. And doesn't that understanding open us to what is beautiful? They are, I think, intricately woven together.
Mm, mm. Yeah, it's that scope of recognizing that we're part of something much, much more universal than the isolated place where we feel detached from that. And that is a very lonely place to be. There's something that's like such a beautiful balance of showing up and care for someone where we're recognizing that, yeah, it's not our place to fix or rescue or guide the healing journey. It's our opportunity to really witness and encourage the person to like be the guide, and we're walking with them rather than walking for them. And that can be really hard as people who want to be, we want to be of service in the most, the most beautiful way that we can. And I'm curious about that line of like the integrity of the person's process is more important, and letting, you know, providing support without directing anything is just a more compassionate and appropriate way to move forward.
Yeah, I think it goes back to what we spoke about at the beginning. It's what is this moment? Is this like, what is this moment asking of me? What is this moment asking of this person? What is mine to do and see and share? What's in service to them in the moment? What's not? It's a profound listening that I think care providers and space holders have to do, because you're not just listening to the person, you're also listening over their head. Like what's their soul saying they need right now, or what's the moment saying it needs right now, which may or may not be what's on the checklist or what's called for um in sort of like a rule book or something. And it's good to know all of those things and learn all of those things. Um but yeah, there's a way that like sometimes we're called to step into a situation and sort of like, you know, really like be the candle bearer in the dark and say, follow me, it's this way. And other times we're just supposed to stand behind them and let them know that someone's got their back while they are in, you know, there's just so many different ways to respond. And they're all, again, they're all innocent. They're all coming from this place of innocence and attempting to be from understanding. But I think you're really speaking to, yeah, it's an extra sensory skill, I think, that it comes with that kind of work, especially in these big portal moments of life. That, you know, sometimes it is a more confrontational role, sometimes it's more of an invisible role. It depends. That's, I think, the beauty of, you know, an approach like yours that is like more, it's very holistic, right? Which means sometimes the answer is often it depends, right? It depends on this or that, and that is that really exquisite presence that I think those moments really ask for.
How are you sharing your gifts and passion for caregiving with others? In a world where education and awareness around the postpartum window is lacking or missing from our modern systems, we have a profound opportunity to shift that paradigm. You may be a few simple offerings away from making a truly impactful difference in the lives of mothers and families in your community. We are here to support your journey in the ways that work best for you. Schedule a conscious care strategy session to meet one-on-one with me, and let's identify the right next step for you to begin a path of conscious care for new families that fits your life and your needs. Visit www.sacredwindowstudies.com/strategy-session to schedule a time that works best for you. That's www.sacredwindowstudies.com/strategy-session. Right. It to me it feels like that's where we're really tapping into the art of life,
Mhm.
the art of living, where it is not Lego blocks that are fixed and go together one way. Um, it's and it's so affirming because I think it allows us to show up with all the authenticity that we have and not try to become or mold ourselves into anything but what is actually here right in this very moment. And I think, something that comes up for me that I often reckon with myself is like and I have in my Ayurvedic constitution a good amount of Pitta dosha, which means that I can get impatient. I want that like transformation to be done already. Like I want like to fast forward into this, come on, like let's get this done. And the actual transformation comes in giving it the time that it needs to fully emerge. The transformation isn't complete if I'm rushing to the end. It has to be the deliberate journey that it needs to be. And that can be really hard.
I'm sure. Yeah. And I think, I was thinking too, like we've been talking about care providers, and I think too, you have baby number one and baby number two, it's likely that those were extremely different experiences. And to like say number two wasn't what it should have been because it wasn't like the way people showed up for you was different. The things that you needed was different. Like they were, and that it's this ever evolving. That change is the only constant. Change is the only thing that we know, and I think it's something that our soul is primarily interested in. And and I think what you said is is very common, right? It's when things are uncomfortable and we don't know who we are, that sucks, right? Like it's not super fun and we want it to be over as quickly as possible. And often what I find is like there's, we have authentic impatience, right? We're like, how long am I going to have to be here? And I think that's also part of the human experience, right? We, these old sort of archaic mythological tales are always like, how many years am I in the wilderness? Does anyone know that I'm here? Like, that's a way that we feel being alive. And even if everything's going great in life, sometimes we have these long spans of time where we're like, is anyone listening? And that's a way that we feel. And I think there's a way too that it's because we're so used to using these external metrics of telling us how good we're doing and relying on those for reinforcing who we think we are. When those go away, we can develop a strong resistance to what's actually happening and the undoing of those metrics. And then when we have resistance rather than our authentic impatience and we're just being with our impatience, it's like, okay, well, what's in the resistance? What am I actually afraid of here? What am I actually looking away from? What am I refusing to look at? And that's really, while uncomfortable, that's frequently where the gold nugget is in there.
I'd love to hear a little bit about your story because I know from, what I know about you that you've kind of walked that road of where you were
Mm.
walking in a road that was pretty inspired by the people who raised you and what society told you was important for you to be doing. And there was like a time where you were like, actually, no. Talk about like that realigning with who you were becoming.
Mm. I'm like, which one?
Whichever one you want to talk about.
um, which I think also is good to bring to the forefront in the beginning is it's not a one and done thing. We're like, oh, I did it once and now I realign. It's kind of an ever evolving thing.
Yeah.
But I think, the first 23 something years of my life, had blinders on. I was solely focused on becoming a professional full-time dancer. It's all that I wanted. It's what I'd spent all of my time, money, energy, interest working on and working towards. And usually in those kinds of high performance environments, we're often sold this romantic deal where a lot of people are telling you, like, if you just want it bad enough, you'll get it. If you just work hard enough, it will happen for you, which is great for like a movie, but it's not actually how life works. Like, we don't always get what we want. And you can work hard enough and still not get it. So, those are just true things that are good to orient to. But I was young. And then it also, for me, sort of sandwiched into, I was raised very fundamental, kind of dogmatic Christianity. It was very evangelical. There were ways on the outside it looked very progressive, but on the inside it was still the same thing. And a lot of the similar foundations there are these are the things that you do to be good to get what you want. And so it solidified this identity for me about how the world worked that was solely built around that. Just work hard enough, just go just go fast enough, just want it enough, be very good, do all the things you're supposed to do, and everything will work out the way that your desires want to. And I learned pretty hard that on the outside that didn't work. I put everything I had into it. I didn't get a full-time company job, and I did feel like I was dying. I had no idea who I was. I didn't know how to do anything else. Um, and it was a profound, like almost multi-year long process of letting my paradigm and the way that I thought about the world absolutely shatter and fall to pieces and be angry and be messy and grieve and all of these things, and have to slowly, brick by brick, kind of get reacquainted with like, what's the wider and wilder version of this story? And if I'm going to write this story, like, what do I think is beautiful? What do I think is true? And how do I know that? Which is a much more dangerous or vulnerable or courageous question to ask. And that kind of loop has happened many times over and over again. I closed a business, I filed bankruptcy, like all the ways that you can just have your face like swiped across the floor, um, and just feel humiliated and ashamed and like, wow, that could not have gone any worse. And I'm able to look back in hindsight now and feel so grateful for all of those experiences because I'm not bound by them. I'm not afraid of them. It's like if you go to hell and back, you're like, well, hell wasn't, well, I guess I can get through hell. That's nice. And you're not afraid by it anymore. And then I feel like there's less in the way of me relating to life. I don't have that big resistance like, oh, if I do that, well, as long as I don't fail in front of people, or as long as people don't misunderstand me, or as long as people don't think I'm a bad person, or as long as I don't lose all my money and everybody else's money, is like, well, that's not there anymore. It's just what's true. What am I here to do? The end. And it's really gifted me a perspective of those experiences that is very freeing and has freed up how I relate to life in such a profound way that it's just about what is mine to do right now and follow that. And we don't know what will happen, and I don't need to know. And um, yeah, it's a way of being bound only by that presence that I'm very grateful for. Yeah.
Mm. It's so beautiful. I really relate to that. There's something about having been through something just unimaginable. Like you never would have wanted any of X, Y, or Z. But without having gone through that, we're not who we are. And we can't speak to what has come out of that and the ways that we've transformed. And there, there's such value of growing through doing hard things and looking at them and realizing that they're not as scary or as life disrupting as we thought that they were going to be in a way. It's an opportunity for me personally going through those spaces of, you know, my marriage, like being on the precipice or, having my dreams, lofty, lofty, lofty dreams, like really reckoning with that's not going to happen. um, and trying to find out what else is here, what else is here. And actually what's there is limitless and vast.
Yeah, it's true. And that's kind of, and it's been interesting to see, like now when I'm with people in those spaces, I'm like, oh, you're where the good stuff is. I know you don't see that and you don't feel that right now, and that's fine. I don't need you to. But like, it's interesting from a space holder care provider perspective to be like, this is where the gold is. And to bring that sort of awareness of the treasure chest to that moment can be really profound for people. And because a lot of what we're meeting at the end of those is fear, and we have to look at it. It's this, like I was talking about the resistance earlier. We just want to look away and we want to look away, but it's like you're not going to go through it all the way unless you look at the thing that you're afraid might be true about you. It's like, well, if I'm, for me, when like I had a business that closed and I'm filing bankruptcy and everyone's upset with me and blah, blah, blah. And I had, again, yet more and more layers of not wanting people to be upset with me, needing to do everything right, making sure I follow through on my word. And it's like, if actually all of those are also not what my identity is built around, who then am I? What's even more true? Or if it's someone's marriage or, yeah, the degree, the job that you get fired from, whatever. It's like, well, then you're being gifted from life the endless alchemical invitation to get to what is more and more true. And our ego doesn't always love that, right? It doesn't look
No.
good on a resume. It doesn't make for like 5 tips to get to the top of your game, but it does bring you closer to rubbing up against life, which is actually the thing that we're here to do and actually the thing that we want to do. People don't have kids because they're like, well, this is the easy, sensical thing to do. No, they have some unspeakable, sometimes spontaneous, sometimes unconscious off desire to be close with life in this way. And we don't know where that will go. And so if we're not guaranteed the outcome of chasing the dream and getting the thing, then what then is the role of desire? Is it to get everything you want and check things off your list? Like, it's not. Like, we'll get some of the things we want and we'll get other things that we don't want, and it'll be an amazing, beautiful, strange cauldron of our life. But what then is the role of desire? But I think it's just to feel, is to turn us and burn us more alive. And then if you're burning alive, like, you're doing it. Like, you're doing it. This is the human thing.
When you were in that place of transformation that was so uncomfortable. And I think oftentimes when we are in that place, we're not like necessarily on purpose, like doing something to help us stay in it and with it and see it through. We're just like kind of survival mode. But like when I look back, I can see that like I was like subconsciously like doing things to like help me navigate it. What were those things for you? What did you discover that you knew how to do?
The 3 things I talk about the most are quiet, beauty, and devotion. And quiet, which is for me simply at some points in my life just been 5 minutes in the dark in the morning with a candle and a book that reminds me. Like, I don't know why it reminds me of who I am, but it sparks like a story or a thing that I'm like, that feels true. And that's all that I need to know in that moment. This feels true. This feels beautiful. And how do I move closer to it? And when you're in those moments, there's something really like instinctual and like primal almost. Like, you don't have a logical reason why. You just know you want to be close to that feeling. And then that feeling softens you. And then you move closer to beauty. And then that opens you a little bit more. And then I find that those things together move me into devotion to the moment, where I'm not primarily oriented around the resistance or the fear or the way I hope it goes or the way it doesn't go. Can I just make space and can I just find the beauty? And that will lead me to the next step, which leads to the next step, which leads to the next step. Um, I'm remembering there was this window before I met my husband. I was living with my boyfriend at the time. We were living together, and I was starting to feel profoundly disgruntled, like for no reason. He was like a wonderful person, a lovely human, but something in me was like, oh, I don't know. And I didn't know what to do and I didn't know what was wrong, but I just started getting up in the morning and being with my like Scottish folklore myths and playing this music and then finding this poem and then listening to this song and then crying in the car and then realizing, oh, I want something that makes me feel like that. And then 2 months later, I met my husband, and a year later, we got married. So it was like, and I didn't know that. I just know that something was inviting me to move close to it. And it's sort of like, I'm thinking about improv again, just like, sometimes you're blindfolded and just crawling through a big room full of people and you just got to feel your way around. It's like that. You just know that there's a song that feels kind of like this, that often feels and sounds like something that you loved and that felt like home when you were a child. The story that you loved, the character that made sense, the song that you gripped towards. And you just got to follow that with your eyes closed, in a way that you only can in a theater or dance improv class with a blindfold on. Yeah.
It's such a powerful reminder that we don't need like the top 5 tips to like navigate a life change. That's honestly like that wisdom is innate,
Yes.
and we can trust that we will be the guide.
Life is
That
close to you already.
yeah, it's here. It's here. And you just need to feel that first step, because then that next step shows you what the next one is. It's just one step.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like being in the dark in the forest at night. And it's like you can only see that next. And then eventually your eyes adjust. And then like a little fox comes in and is like, follow me. And then you follow the fox for a minute. And then you hear a creek and you're like, I'm thirsty. Let's go towards the creek. Like it's got its own wisdom. Life's already behind you, life's already close to you. Um, but it will ask for different skills. And these are the mother skills, I think. The nighttime skills, the lunar skills, they're different than the skills that got you through college and got you a degree. They're not the same.
Yeah. Yeah. They're the quiet ones,
Mm-hmm.
the quiet ones that are always there, and that it takes turning off the light.
It does. Which, sometimes we do on purpose, and other times, like in the postpartum window, life does it for you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh, Grace, thank you so much. That
Mm.
was, I think whether we realize it or not, even when we're walking through a space that feels like it's cruising, like this is figured out, there's an opportunity to see so many more layers in this multifaceted divine path that we are on, and how much more beauty can we experience when we get curious about the layers that we're not looking at.
It's true. It's definitely true. Yeah. It's like if those portals are not things to be conquered or achieved, but they're things that change us and we get through them. And then we don't banish them like, oh, that was a terrible time. I can't believe that happened to me. But how do we learn to like walk with them so that then we have the portal at any time? And I think that can be something that's always in our backpack, or a way that we listen to, like you said, a layer, this other frequency of a story that's always happening. And it can open us up to so much understanding and compassion. And I think ultimately connection with what it is to be alive, which is all that really matters, really.
Grace, when you work with people on these paths of rediscovery and healing, what does that look like?
It depends.
It depends.
It depends. Everyone's edge is different. Um, I primarily work, I think I have a very close energy with this sort of dark mother initiatory portal that I'm very close to. And, if I'm working on the internet, we're primarily working via Zoom. And like, how do we bring in more of this awareness and facilitate the inner awareness, but also the somatic capacity and also the erotic capacity to be fully with life in this moment so that you can become what life is trying to get you to. And then if we're in person, I'm bringing a lot of those similar tools, but I love being in person so much. There's a way that we can bring all of the beauty and all of the senses and the touch to really engage transformation in a way that doesn't feel like trauma. It's if we have enough space for it and if we're oriented towards life in such a way that is like really spacious and mysterious, if our body has the somatic capacity, if we stay connected to our erotic desire flame, then transformation can become something that we're good at and that we enjoy and brings us closer and closer to the capital I intimacy that is what it is to be human. Um, and so sometimes I'm working with people on Zoom and we're doing coaching or we're doing shadow work, or sometimes I'm leading a pleasure circle in my membership, and sometimes I'm doing a wax ceremony over here. Sometimes I'm putting my hands on people and praying for them and singing over them while they cry on a table. It just depends on what the moment asks for, and what shape of the moment is we're in together. But pretty much beauty, devotion, the erotic, and the mother are all going to be in the mix together. I think you're on mute, Christine.
Thank you. My beautiful son came home and muted myself. I think what I hope that every listener that is with us here can take away is that we don't have to walk those moments of reckoning and transformation all by ourselves. Yes, we have to walk it, like it's something we have to do, but we don't have to do it without resource. We don't have to do it all by ourselves. We don't have to do it in a way that is painful through and through. Like it can be hard and it can also be supported. And so to know that these very real moments of emergence into a new version that may feel invited or may feel forced, we can find the innocence and the curiosity and the beauty within that. And that's what you're doing. And I'm really grateful to have met you. And I'm really grateful that others can discover more that this in you exists. Now you're muted, Grace.
Of course. Thank you for that. It's been a real gift to be in conversation with you and to, be sort of standing on opposite sides of the table, so to speak, and sort of seeing the same hologram and pointing to it in a different way. It's been a real gift. So thank you for having me.
You're welcome. We did say that, Mercury retrograde, it's like it's going to happen. The tech is going to happen in a large way or a small way. And it's just one of those inevitabilities in life, just like change.
Mm-hmm. Yep. It's not bad. It's just different.
It just is. Thank you, Grace. Thank you so much for being here.
It's a gift.
For those
Thank
of
you
you
so much.
listening, please have a look at the show notes and we'll make sure that you all know how to access the support that Grace offers and learn more about how these moments that are going to happen can happen in a way that bring us closer to our authentic, true selves. Thank you.
Thank you.
Shanti, Shanti.
Center for Sacred Window Studies has been training postpartum care providers, professionals who work with new families, and individuals passionate about postpartum care since 2018. We regularly host live free events alongside our online and in-person training and certification programs. Hop on our newsletter list to get direct access to all of our events and community support gatherings. Our mission is not only in training conscious postpartum care providers, but in fostering a robust, informed, and thriving community of postpartum professionals. Once you step inside, you're family forever. Visit www.sacredwindowstudies.com to add your email to our newsletter list. You can support our work by subscribing to the Sacred Window podcast and sharing with someone you know who would love it. Thanks for being here and participating in the culture-wide shift that recognizes the need for and the importance of conscious postpartum care.